Bigger than Capes.
Give me some outside.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Oh, dry.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by Will. How you doing, Will?
Good? Howdy, buddy. I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. That seemed really insincere when I asked how you doing, but yeah.
It's all right. My answer was insincere. I'm actually awful.
Good. Right, well, balancing the scales of where we're at in life.
Boat. Good.
So this week we're talking about licensed comics and our top 5-ish of those.
Yeah. I think it's a loose top 5. I'm not sure we're going to commit ourselves to saying these are the top 5 best licensed books, but they're certainly top 5 that are interesting and I think are pretty good for new fans, like getting into some of these things.
Yes. I will say up front that due to a forthcoming episode, we have omitted Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The best of all licensed products. The best of all products.
Kind of, yeah.
Take that, white sliced bread.
I've read like 100 issues of the Turtles ongoing and all the tie-ins and everything this year, and I've had a great time doing it. Obviously, we're going to dig into this more in next week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
But Turtles is the best of things, and unfortunately, everything else does pale in comparison. So this is going to be a really, but yeah, reading Turtles has been rad, and I think it's piqued my interest in putting more time into some of the other licensed comics out there. I don't know if I'm going to dedicate like 5 months of my life to all of them, but who knows? I am apparently very impulsive and somewhat stupid, so
maybe you'll pick up another one today, to do an equally ludicrous dive.
The deepest of dives, if you will.
Deepest. Some of them are at least as long as Turtles, I think.
Some of them are longer, I think. Some stuff I've got at least is
yeah, perhaps not true of my list, but yeah, some of it definitely.
I do wonder now if I should have researched when all these comics started so I could throw some facts at people. I've not done that, so...
Yeah, I'll be honest, that wasn't part of my thought either. I just kind of...
Well, we'll just wing it and, we'll edit this bit out maybe if it makes us sound incompetent.
It definitely does.
So do you want to dive straight in, or have you got some news and facts and trivia to throw around?
Facts and trivia. The only thing is I saw that comic book sales have increased in France. And that is
saying
without
something.
Well, it's without their annual Asterix book having come out yet. So there has been an increase in non-Asterix reading material. And I am a fairly recent convert, although it didn't take me that much to convert, to Euro comics.
Yes, yeah.
So as, part of the American industry, I think, is beginning to struggle. I think the Euro industry is getting better. So just keep translating those books for us idiots who can only read the one language, and I'll keep buying them.
This is one of the things with the translations. It is incredibly frustrating to be sat here in England and know that if I want to read European comics, I either have to go through them panel by panel with the Google Translate app, or wait for them to be translated by Dark Horse, Oni Press, Boom, Image. So I don't like the idea that I have to wait for Americans to acknowledge Spanish, French, Italian creators just so I can read them when it's like I can go to Spain and buy the book and sit there painstakingly read it, sure, but
yeah, and there are a few, I think Humanoids translate some of their own work.
They do, that's true.
And I think the Titan British comic company, they do some translation, or at least publish
They might
some
do,
translated works, I think. So I think there are some options, but I know what you mean. Like, it is a shame that in order for us to enjoy it, it has to actually be sellable to an American audience first, and we just pick up the crumbs.
Yes. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's the same with like
comics.
Yeah, in general. And like manga, more manga gets translated to, again, French, Spanish, Italian than gets translated to English, which is disappointing because it's then we get manga filtered through America to what England are allowed. So
yeah, it seems annoying. How hard are they as written languages? Because I've tried to learn languages, but I'm dumb, so that hasn't worked. But
I have been working on learning Spanish for some months now, probably since the start of the year, and I'm getting to the point now where I can read stuff and like translate enough to think I understand. So that's
okay.
So I'm
so
getting
the gist.
Like there was a whole panel in Bebop and Rocksteady Hit the Road with Hector Razmataz, the like Monster Hunter guy, where he does like a whole 2 speech bubble conversation in Spanish.
Yeah,
I understood most of that.
Nice.
So
I didn't. You've read more Turtles than I have because you read the Spanish bits.
By 2 speech bubbles, pulling ahead. So yeah, I don't know. If you've got the dedication, ultimately, if you pick up French, you'll be able to have the most European comics because they all seem to get published in French first.
France does seem to be the capital of European comics. No, that's cool. I might be able to learn some French.
If you do French, I'll do Spanish. We'll get Matt and between Matt and Angela, do you think they can crack Italian? And we'll.
Is that the other big German comic makers, or?
This is something I've been meaning to look into because I know. Okay, when I went to Madrid and Barcelona, that there's like a ridiculous amount of comic book shops, but I only found one when I was in Berlin. So I'm kind of curious if there's.
Yeah, maybe it's just not a big scene.
They had a really cool Spider-Woman t-shirt that didn't fit me. I think that was the moral of the story of don't go chasing waterfalls. I don't know. Stick to the. I don't know how to make this TLC song work.
You'll have to edit it back in later once you've thought about it more.
And I will think about it more. That's the important thing.
Won't be able to sleep.
Stay up all night writing alternative TLC lyrics. I guess it probably wouldn't be the first time, to be fair. It's the kind of life I've been living.
That keeps me up at night.
Incidentally, if you were wondering, TLC, their albums really hold up, especially like the kind of late 90s stuff. Just still good. That's what the listener at home was thinking. Incidentally, if you weren't thinking that, hit us up on Twitter at Bigger Than Capes, on Facebook. I don't know, Google, like search Bigger Than Capes on Facebook, and also Instagram, Bigger Than Capes, and biggerthancapes.com, where allegedly you can comment, but no one does.
No, that's sad.
I'm running a kind of study of my own at the moment of trying to figure out if there's any crossover between podcast listeners and website views. At the moment, I'm not sure there is.
Well, I've got to be honest. I get my podcast through an app, so I don't visit a website. And if I had to, and things weren't all collected for me in one simple app, I probably wouldn't listen to it.
Yeah, that's fair. And if people do want to hear Angela have breakdowns over Valiant comics in written form, if you want to hear that in written form, that is available at biggerthancapes.com.
Yeah, it's part of our Patreon. He pays £50 and we'll come and read out articles at your house.
I will set up that Patreon if that's what it takes. I will gladly do personalized episodes where we just talk at you.
Love it.
Should we get to the point, do you reckon? Or are we like...
Let's get to it. Let's get right to that point.
So, we've both compiled a loose top 5 list. I'm sure all 5 books that we've picked, top series that we've picked, are pretty move aroundable at any given time. You want to go like reverse order, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Or...
I think that's the best way to go about it.
Incidentally, I did not write my notes in order, so this could get interesting with my entries.
Yep.
And expects me to argue with myself. I need to stop doing written notes. I think that's key. So, because then I can copy and paste. The problem with me doing written notes is I need glue and scissors to copy and paste. So
old-fashioned copy and pasting.
Old school, like they would have made us do it. Primary school, secondary. I don't remember education.
I hope you weren't cutting out and sticking things at secondary school. I mean, yeah, it probably was, to be fair. Graphic design, which was basically just that.
I tried to make a CD cover in graphics that was a padlock, and yeah, did an awful lot of cutting and sticking to try and make a proof of concept that it could work, and I was wrong.
Could it?
No, not really. No, it's real style over substance. The CD case ended up being about twice the size of the actual CD, and ultimately, once it was open, seems to be nowhere to fasten it again. But it looked rad, and that's
super cool. That's what's most important.
I'm not entirely sure what I was meant to be doing for the project. I just know I reinvented the CD case in a new, I want to say cool way, but I don't think it ever was. Well,
I think that was part of the syllabus. Reinvent the CD case in a cool way.
I just failed at it, obviously, you know.
So it goes.
Here we are.
School days.
So, you want to go first with your?
Sure, I'll go first. My first pick is from Dynamite Publishing. I have picked it at number 5 because it is slightly problematic, and I'll come back to that momentarily. But that pick is the James Bond series.
Okay.
It's a type of Bond which is based much more closely on the book and kind of Ian Fleming's original version, rather than any of the film versions that have come out. The art was originally done by Jason Masters and was later done by Rafa Labosco, and they both tend to go for a much closer representation of kind of how Bond was described in the books and how Fleming described him himself, and they're quite like fairly dark and serious in tone. You know, they're not your kind of Roger Moore Bond. They're he's quite a kind of cold and calculating character. He's also, you know, still doesn't lack any of that charm. And I think they're good as well because as a standalone kind of read, you wouldn't need to know a huge amount about the universe of Bond. You know, they stand as they are. The element which is problematic is that the first 2 volumes were written by Warren Ellis.
Okay.
Who is far from being a popular man right now. I don't think we're necessarily the forum to get into that, but I still think it's worth mention that, yeah, Warren Ellis has behaved extremely poorly of late, and there's lots on the internet to go and read about it. But even the people who accused Warren Ellis said they didn't want him to be cancelled, and so for that reason, I've decided to still include it on the list.
Okay.
And of course, listeners at home, you can make your own decisions, but I would probably encourage you to do a bit of research into Warren Ellis if you don't know. But now it's later been picked up by Benjamin Percy, who writes the later volumes and I think is the ongoing writer now. And you can read them standalone as well. So yeah, that's my number 5. I'd recommend it for anybody who's into like spy thrillers. It's probably going to be one of the more mature adult things that are on my list today. And of course, any fans of Bond, particularly like classic Bond as well. I
think that's a pretty good call. I haven't actually read any of Bond. I've read many things that are inspired by Bond.
Sure.
So I read some of, was it called Jimmy's Bastards?
Jimmy's Bastards, yeah, the Garth Ennis one.
Yeah, I started reading that when it started happening, which I'm going to say was 2016, 2017.
It's as good a guess as I can give you.
And also all of. I read all of Bang, the Matt Kinton book that had like kind of a Bond thing, at least in some issues. At both of them, thought to myself, should I just read some Bond? Do I just need to?
Well, I think much like any kind of popular franchise character, his influence is bled into loads of other stuff. And as you say, I think Ninjak is a Batman Bond
very good example of
crossover. But I have read some of the Dynamite books, including the Warren Ellis stuff, which I must say, from a purely comics perspective, are very good. Dynamite are a company that I have a mixed relationship with.
Yes, as do I.
Because if I'm entirely honest, I'm not sure their quality control is very good. I think they put out some really great stuff. And then I think they put out some stuff which sometimes I think has been a bad idea, a bad call.
Yeah, and I often feel like as a company, they spend a couple of years trying to win over the classic kind of audience of everyone that you expect to read Red Sonja and Vampirella and Green Hornet.
All the licenses.
Yeah, I feel like they spend a couple of years chasing the audience that have been reading those series for 30 years, and then they spend a couple of years hiring writers and artists that really appeal to me to try and make those characters appeal to us and our generation, and try and do things like the reboot. The Gold Key characters are a great example. So Magnus, Dr. Spectre, Solar, Turok. Thank you. I feel like there's another one, but I don't have time to list characters I can't remember right now. And I feel like they do a really good run where it's Fred Van Lente, Greg Pak, Mark Waid were all brought in and did quite good runs, and then they go away, and then they come back and they bring in people like Kyle Higgins and other such names. I can't remember who wrote these damn books, to try and renovate them and make them. So Magnus went from being a robot fighting dude dressed like Zach Brannigan to being a jumpsuit wearing woman who kind of hacked into robots' brains and tried to stop rogue AIs in this weird digital
Johnny
world.
Quest style.
Yes, and
sounds rad. I'm on board.
It was really good. One volume, no more Magnus, and then we go back to Turok being problematic and outdated, and yeah. Wow, I can't remember what my point was, but I feel like I've just ran down.
Yeah,
for a minute there.
I think it was all fair though. So, but as far as it goes, I think you might have said Diamond as well when you meant Dynamite, but
I could have done that. Also, and the problem with Diamond,
yeah, that's a whole different rant. But the Bond books are good, and because Dynamite, unlike Marvel and DC, their books don't cross over. You don't need to read anything else if you don't want to. But worth noting that The Boys, after DC dropped it, was picked up and ultimately published to completion by Dynamite after the second volume, I think.
Yeah, it must be thereabouts, right?
Give or take. So the very popular TV show was a Dynamite property.
And to be fair, my complaints aside, there are some really good Dynamite books. It just can vary as to when I want them and if they appeal to me.
Yeah. They're a company I like to dip in and out of, but when they get it right, it's really right.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And maybe I will get around to my Bond now that I've read all the alternative versions of Bond. Maybe it's time, Will. Maybe
now's the time.
So my fifth pick, I think, was also going to be your fifth pick originally, and we would have had an overlap here. And my fifth pick is Transformers.
Indeed.
I started. You're going to hear this sentence a few times tonight, or today, or whenever. Podcasts aren't time specific, just the recordings. I started trying to make a list of who wrote Transformers and drew Transformers, and realized that it's like a massive list of like.
It's a billion people. It's not one of those licenses that was helmed by like one or two people. It's been tackled by a billion creators.
Yes, and it's been kind of rehashed, and I think we're on. I want to say we're on like phase 3 or phase 4 now of Transformers. So there was the 2005 series, a 2010 series, a 2019 series. I think there's. So there's ample jumping on points for Transformers from my understanding. I'm not sure where I jumped on. and the reason Transformers is fifth on this list is because I do have a kind of love-hate with the overall experience of Transformers.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not aware, Transformers are like vehicles that turn into robots.
I mean, if you were born at any time from about 1985 to now, I think you'll probably know.
I do hope, though, that there's someone out there listening who I've just explained that to, and it's blown their mind. Like
they only ever knew GoBots.
Yeah, it's like whoa! There was a second option,
a better option.
I actually think GoBots are now owned by Hasbro as well, so I think they have the option of like folding GoBots into the Hasbro universe and are just resisting it.
I think it's wise. Continue to resist Hasbro.
So, okay. The traditional storyline of the Transformers is that Bumblebee comes to Earth and makes friends with Shia LaBeouf, and hilarity ensues.
Shia LaBeouf says, "Do it." Then Bumblebee does it, and
it's done.
Roll. That's what I remember, anyway.
That was a really dumb joke, and I I feel bad about making it, but I also stand by it. Justice for Sam Witwicky. Okay, sorry. I'm going to try and get us back to my point. I should have known I wasn't capable of having a serious conversation about Transformers, but here we are.
One is.
Okay. The traditional story is that the Autobots and the Decepticons are at war over Cybertron. And that's basically kind of the entirety of what's going on. It's this endless war between good and evil, between cars and planes, between...
Absolutely. It is funny how most of the bad guys tend to be planes.
Yes.
And the good guys tend to be wheeled vehicles. There seems to be a conscious effort to like pick one or the other.
Yeah, and I've never been sure why. And okay, like obviously Megatron turns into a tank or a gun or a T-Rex. Slightly more variation, but and Soundwave was a cassette player.
Of course.
The best somehow. I don't know why, but
his cassettes would turn into like a vulture and a panther.
Yeah, they would, and that's just cool, and it's giant ones as well. This is the thing: the fact that Soundwave wasn't just cassette player sized; he was giant robot sized.
He'd be a normal sized cassette player, or he'd be bigger than a house.
Yeah, no divide.
Is it called like mass displacement? Was that their pseudo-scientific explanation about? I love it. Just give it a silly name like Star Trek, and I buy into it.
What questions can we even ask? We've been told.
Yep, the mass is displaced, obviously.
And you know what? As far as science goes, fair play. So I have a kind of love-hate relationship with Transformers because I read some books which are quite standalone. So like there was the Wreckers trilogy, which is Sins of the Wreckers, Last Stand of the Wreckers, and Requiem of the Wreckers, which is the one I struggle to say the most.
Yeah, best named.
Which kind of focuses around, I guess, like the Suicide Squad of Transformers. So they're like the Autobots who might not be coming back from their missions. They're like Black Ops, Suicide Squad guys. And quite a lot of their trilogy focuses on kind of, you know, the war crimes of the Autobots and the fact that, you know, obviously they're trying to keep that undercover because now peace has been achieved, and if it comes out that they actually did all these horrible things, you know, peace goes away. So it's an interesting, weird trilogy that kind of stands alone from what's going on in the bigger Transformers world. But
yeah,
much like with Turtles, there's a lot of miniseries that you can kind of take or leave. But if you take, it adds a lot, and if you leave, well, you'll never know.
But I think because, I mean, as you mentioned, because it's kind of this forever war and it's been going on for millennia and will probably go on for millennia more. And you have these sort of semi-immortal machines that are fighting this war. It means that they can tell stories over a massive timeline. So I've read stories that are back on before Cybertron becomes a kind of war-torn ruin and they have to go out in the galaxy to find Energon. I've read the stories when they arrive at Earth and befriend Shia LaBeouf or another human, whichever human they so desire. And, you know, you get almost espionage stories where they're trying to hide amongst people and hide from the Decepticons. And I think you get some more like space hopping ones where, was it part of the 2019 series that half of the crew had gone off on a spaceship and had like space adventures?
Yeah, I think that was 2019. And then does that pave the way for like the Beast Wars series we're getting now, which I haven't read, but I am the target audience for Beast Wars?
I think, yeah, me too. But I think because they've got such a huge cast of characters and because their outline of their story is so simple, is I think you can keep telling loads of interesting stories within that paradigm. You know, you can kind of keep telling loads of different stories. As you say, the one with the Wreckers where you question the Autobots, there's lots in there where you are shown that actually, you know what, maybe the Autobots aren't all that, and maybe the Decepticons are onto something. Like maybe they do have some points to be made.
Yeah.
And I think that complexity of writing in what is essentially a toy advert, I think is superb. I think that's where these licensed books really stand out above some of their competition, is they are much better than they ever deserve to have been.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are so the love-hate thing comes from the fact that there are times when
some of it's bad.
I don't think I've read anything that's like explicitly bad, but I think there are times when I pick up Transformers and it feels like a very dense universe. And I know people who are into Transformers who have read everything, who have watched everything, who have maybe not all the toys, because that's like, you know, millions of pounds worth of plastic madness. And metal. And man, when the toys were die-cast, they were cool. But I know plenty of people who are like deep into Transformers, and maybe that's the thing that the comic does at times edge on acknowledging that audience, so as narratively it can become as dense as those people want it to be, and acknowledge whatever weird and wonderful Transformers toy they once loved or character. And I think that's one of the things that, whilst I've watched on and off a lot of Transformers and I've seen the films and the original series, and was it Armada and then Robots in Disguise that were like the late 90s series?
I think so. There's been a most recent Netflix one,
which I've not watched yet, but probably history suggests I'm going to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Whilst I've watched a decent amount of Transformers and all of Beast Wars and Beast Machines, obviously that's my age group. I I feel like I perhaps don't know the most, and I think that's why I sometimes struggle with picking up Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are super into it,
yeah, then there's plenty to dig into. But I read some of the spotlights early on, which were like one issue focuses on individual characters, and that was a super good way to get into the world because you learn a bunch of characters, most of which, as you say, if you know Transformers, you'll know Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, possibly like Jazz and Ultra Magnus, and some of those like
RC?
Slightly B tier, but yeah, RC perhaps. But you get all of these introductions to these different characters, and they are often spaced out again across the timeline. So not only do you get to learn the characters, but it often tells you something intrinsic about the lore of Transformers. So
yes.
My recommendation would normally be check out some of the spotlights. I think they're collected in individual trades and also as part of the huge ultimate, what are they called? It's the same editions that Turtles.
The IDW collections, I think.
Yeah.
But whereas Turtles is currently 12, 13 giant collections, I think Transformers goes beyond that because we have Phase 1 and then Phase 2, and they
now
just
deep
keep
into
coming.
Phase 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, from the bits I've read, I've always pretty dug it. Like I think the designs are cool. They are pretty kind of toy and cartoon accurate, which for my little nostalgia brain like works for me. Ticks the boxes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there will be for a lot of people in our age group that little glimpse when you're reading through where you'll be like, hey, I had this toy.
Absolutely. I
Which
mean,
is nice.
had is a relevant term because I
Still have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Failed to get rid of. Don't know what I'd do with it.
Optimus gets pride of place on the top shelf.
I can't find my original Optimus. I've just got this little tiny guy version that's like about 4 or 5 inches tall, and I'm like, I know there's a giant Optimus Prime around here somewhere, but where? Yeah. Transformers, man. They're fun.
But also great bad guys as well. Megatron, Galvatron, Omicron?
Unicron? Was it Unicron? I think it was Unicron.
Yeah, Unicron.
And then, Beast Wars Megatron, where he was a T-Rex. Waspinator, where he just wanted to...
It's just Starscream, but now I'm a wasp.
Yeah. just like, oh, what's the twist? It's like, it's a wasp. Like, all right, okay, right. That adds up. Like, anything else? No, exactly the same kind of character, but in wasp form.
To that point, characters like Starscream, I think, often get written better in some of these comics and are a bit more complicated, rather than just being the whiny number 2, like to Megatron. He's kind of got ideals of leadership and wanting to usurp, but he's also terrified of Megatron.
Yeah, and that's like something that's hinted at in cartoons and stuff, but when you can actually commit to, like, I don't know, narration from his point of view or like scheming in the background, it's a totally different way of doing it.
And sometimes you'll get, over the course of volumes, like plots that have been put into play early on by Starscream will then ruin the Decepticons' plan later on when like when the Autobots need a Deus Ex Machina, Starscream's there to ruin everybody's fun. I think it's good. It's good stuff.
It is good stuff. And it is something I have considered that now the Great Turtles reread is over. I was considering, like, should I do all of Transformers?
That's a commitment.
I think my lack of finances might be the answer to this question, though.
Yeah. I don't know, I might. Why am I doing that? Stop it.
Come back in 6 months' time for Will's Roundup episode where he talks about all of Transformers.
Yeah. I'll be incredibly tired. And then Optimus went back to Cybertron where he... Oh, God. Why?
I can't imagine what you would be like having read, like, I don't know, 10 years worth of Transformers.
Probably start up my own cult or something.
Teachings of Cybertron.
Trying to espouse to everybody who'll listen to me why Rodimus Prime is the real Prime.
Right, just episode 1. All of the primes in order of how prime they are. Number 1.
Who's the primest Prime?
Done the math, I've figured it out. Would you like to hit us with your number 4?
Absolutely. So my number 4 comes from the same company because guess what? IDW do loads of licensed stuff. So
that they do.
They're going to come up more than once today. I wanted to get in an example of how video games frequently cross over into comic books. I think we get it a lot in terms of standalone little fillers of information. So I know that Overwatch has a kind of 10 or 12 issue run.
Yeah.
And things like Bloodborne and Assassin's Creed tend to get spin-off comics and fine. But the one that I've picked out and one that I think stands above many of the rest is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay, yes.
So it's, of course, a comic set in the kind of expanded universe of Sonic and his animal-based chums. I think it's most comparable to sort of the 90s cartoon era of Sonic. I think that's where it gets a lot of its look from. But things are very kind of computer game and early cartoon accurate. You know, places look like the Green Hill Zone where they live. And the stories tend to be pretty light-hearted adventures, normally revolving around like a Chaos Gem or Dr. Eggman, which, was it just me or was it a UK thing that he was Dr. Robotnik?
It seemed like it was a UK thing that he was Robotnik. I'm not sure why. The Beatles?
Maybe.
They were the Eggmen?
Cuckoo, choo. But I think the script in it is consistently funny and like snappy. And there's also like it's one of those comics with a real undercurrent of heart. You know, there's always like a good message just about being better friends. But all the characters have their own like individual personalities as well. And again, we'll probably reference it quite a lot. But like the Turtles, they fit nicely into a little team together. So I think in the first volume, you're immediately introduced to Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and I can't remember that. There's a couple of other like newer characters whom I just can't remember their name off the top of my head. But you get the band together pretty quick, and they all sort of fit into this nice little team together where they bounce off each other. The arts and the colour in particular is super vivid. There's no attempt to kind of take it down that darker tone that the video game sort of ended up going poorly. But a bit like the TMNT universe, it brings together lots of different bits of the Sonic universe from the various games, including Shadow and Metal Sonic, who were radical 90s and early 2000s characters.
Radical 90s is perhaps the best way to describe the 90s, I think.
Yeah. I think this is a really good one for all ages as well. As I think the stories are strong enough and they're funny enough that an adult can read them and get loads out of them. But they are kind of gentle and lovely enough that I think kids would also get a huge kick. Does that thing that I think when like Pixar are at their best, where it is aimed at children, but it has kind of that nod to the parents as well.
Yes.
And I don't think it's never like lewd, you know, it's never get crossed into that area, but it's funny as an adult as well. Like the humor is just good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I must admit, I've not dipped into the Sonic comics, perhaps as much as I will do at some point. Let's be honest. I've always been a Sonic guy based purely on the games. I've seen some of the cartoon when I was younger, but I know that, well, this just sounds like a catchphrase now. I know plenty of people who were really into the Sonic the comic from like the 90s.
Yeah, the Archie comic. I've got to say, the one I've picked out is the IDW because it's the one I'm familiar with. But I've heard real good stuff about the Archie one as well.
Yeah, and obviously, that was licensed too, just by different people. I do actually know that I think it's Sonic 42, which is out soon, if not already out, is the 30th anniversary of Sonic.
30th anniversary, yeah.
And at least, I think it's one of the variant covers is Abby Bulmer? Ryder Bulmer? By Abby, who worked in Travelling Man in Manchester. She's done one of the covers for it.
Nice.
She's pretty cool.
That's super rad.
She's one of the most hardcore Sonic fans I know as well, so it seems like, pretty fitting.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think at some point I'm going to get into Sonic. I know, for better or for worse, IDW have just solicited. I don't think it's out yet.
You can pre-order it.
First hardback.
First of their IDW collection. You've got a problem, man, but I love it. I'm going to feed that problem. I don't know if you're part of the issue, if I'm honest with you, Will. I don't know if it's you who's got me into this giant hardback thing, I do
or
vicariously.
if you've just both gotten in it at the same time.
It's my leaning into digital comics. If I buy something physical, I want it to be the best physical version it can be.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the hardback bit comes in. But I'm super into the idea of big physical collections of stuff. Particularly the IDW ones have really nice spines on them for the most part as well.
That's true.
Look really, really nice on shelves. The problem is I don't really have the room for it. So I'm buying them vicariously through you by just slowly encouraging you to buy them all. Maybe you can take a picture of them all on your shelf and send them, and I've a kind of
print them up and hang them in front of your shelves.
Yeah, just stick them up and then not have to do any of the actual investment myself, but get the pleasure from it. That's the plan.
Great, thanks, Will. I'll get right on that.
But also, for the sake of my reputation, I need everybody to know that I'm actually a hardcore Nintendo fan, and Mario's better than Sonic, just not in comics.
Incidentally, I'm fairly sure Valiant did some licensed Mario comics in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're great. These ones are good though. And Mario games are the best. Just to again reaffirm that position.
See, I've always walked a tough line of having Mario on Game Boy, but then having Sonic on Mega Drive when I was a kid. So that was, which side do you come down on?
Well, it's fair to say
Mario.
Yeah, and the reason for that, and the only reason for that, is because I had Nintendos.
Yes, that makes sense.
I didn't play Sonic growing up, so that's why Mario's the best.
Interesting.
Also, who's still around? Just saying.
Hey, in comic book form, Sonic.
Sega still publish games, I guess, but.
True. I distinctly remember, and this is a very 90s memory, coming home from school one day where my dad had been, I don't know, off for whatever reason, and he sat on the floor and he's like, "Don't touch the Mega Drive." I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I've never got this far into Sonic before. No one can touch the Mega Drive." And it being the most definitive moment of all right, this is who you are when no one else is around. Just the guy who's never played this much Sonic in one sitting. And
that's wonderful. I always used to just get to the underwater bits.
Straight Dad. No hesitation.
Just awful.
Even as an adult, I assumed it was something I was going to get better at. But as an adult, I've not got any better at underwater levels. Doesn't matter what Sonic, Mario, Crash Bandicoot, I'm still not good at being underwater. Incidentally, in real life, I also don't think I could fight things underwater very well.
I'll be honest with you, underwater levels on ice, and levels where you fly something that has to have a huge turning circle, I'm out. 2D all the way, me. Any
level, and this is very much a Naughty Dog thing, any level that puts me on a jet ski. No, it doesn't matter if it's Crash or Nathan Drake. Doesn't matter what character I am or what the environment is. I am bad at jet skis. Probably in real life also. So
at least Crash has the good temerity to put you on a tiny polar bear.
Yeah, at least it's got moments where it's like, I'm going to balance this out with a polar bear. But there are also those moments where they put me on a jet ski. No, we can't do business with that. They don't move right, man.
They just don't move right. All right, what's your number 4, buddy?
I'm just thinking about how much I hate jet skis. My number 4 is an interesting one because I'm not entirely sure how applicable this is to being licensed, but I'm just going to run with it, and you're either going to agree or disagree. That's them's the breaks. So, Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming out through Marvel.
It is.
Marvel are not Star Wars, but Disney are Star Wars, and Disney are also Marvel. So is Star Wars licensed to Marvel? Or
well, I think technically it's a good question, and one I think I don't know how to answer. Yeah, Disney own both properties, but it doesn't come out through Disney Publishing. It comes out through Marvel Publishing. So for the purpose of this list, yeah, go for it. But I'm actually going to throw my 2 cents in. I'm going to chuck my number 3 in at the same time, because as it would happen...
Messing with the format, Will.
I have picked, again from IDW, so not messing that hard with the format, but IDW also license a small portion of Star Wars and a small portion of Marvel as well. So I'll let you do your Star Wars pitch first, but I'm going to throw these in at the same time.
Piggyback onto my Marvel Star Wars.
Damn right.
Segment. So I was going to try and throw a year at you then for when I think these started, and I don't know what that year is. Is it 2015, do you reckon? 2016?
Give or take. Yep.
Cracking. So 5-ish years ago, Marvel kind of took over all the Star Wars books. Previously, Dark Horse had been doing Star Wars for quite a long time, I think. But I haven't read any of those, so deal with it. With Star Wars, their first big push from Marvel was to do... so Jason Aaron took on Star Wars and did a series that fit between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And at the same time, so that followed Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, other such characters are available, the Rebels. And Kieran Gillen at the same time did Vader, Darth Vader, to his, employees, which followed Darth Vader and the Empire between New Hope and Empire. So we got to see the same events unfolding kind of from 2 different sides. And
was there a Boba Fett book at the same time?
Yes, where he...
Wasn't he after Luke?
Yeah, Vader hires Boba Fett to find out who Luke is, because he just knows that he's, a Jedi, and we can't be having that. And then Boba Fett goes and interacts with the Star Wars plot, and then turns up in later parts of Vader to kind of like go, hey, I think this is your kid, mate. But obviously he doesn't know Vader's Anakin, and Vader's all like Skywalker, and
makes sense.
But it, whilst not the most necessary, it fills in a lot of story between the 2 films, and I like that. It really piques my interest in Star Wars, I think, because it's hard being a Star Wars fan sometimes.
Absolutely. It's hard being, I think any type of franchise will always disappoint you at some point.
Yeah, and I think
unless it's Turtles, they never disappoint.
Perfection through and through. I think one of the problems I've had with Star Wars is I was like 10-ish when the prequels came out. Mm-hmm. Well, the first one, obviously, I didn't stay 10 for like 9 years. That would be insane. So I just saw Phantom Menace as just a good thing because it was more Star Wars, and as a 10-year-old, that's all I wanted in the world. Wasn't so hot on Attack of the Clones, which is still my feelings about Attack of the Clones, and had a pretty okay time with Revenge of the Sith, and then spent the 10 years after that, or give or take, being told how terrible all those films were, and there was no redeeming factors, and I'm like, Qui-Gon, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, the Clone Wars animated stuff, which meant that by the time these comics were coming out, and we were announcing that we were going to get more Star Wars films, I was pretty down on the whole Star Wars thing because years of being told I was wrong all the time do that to you. But I think the filling in the gaps really works, and being able to give people more of Boba Fett or Lando Calrissian, and being able to do it with some of Marvel's kind of best writers, Jason Aaron, Kieran Gillen, Charles Soule.
They're bringing in the big guns for it. And no, I'm like you. I think Star Wars was a real childhood love for me, and I went to see the first digital re-release of the original films when they came out in sort of 97, 8, and 9. I think they came out in consecutive years. And then, as yourself, went to see the prequels. And like you were saying, it didn't really matter to me that much at the time that they probably weren't like brilliant films through and through. It was just more Star Wars, and pod racing is rad. Jar Jar Binks can jump off a bridge, but a lot of it was good. And I don't care what the internet says, Yoda fighting, flipping about is the coolest thing.
Yeah, I actually, the end of Attack of the Clones, between Yoda doing backflips and that one little bit where Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan are chained to those podiums, and Obi-Wan's all like, seems like Padme's on top of this. Yeah, good stuff. 5 stars.
That's it. There are moments for sure. But to refer back to the comic, I think this run is really fun, though. I think it captures the characters really well. I think it is definitely one for people who are fairly hardcore Star Wars fans, because it does fall in the middle of plots that you need to understand what's going on.
Yes.
I don't think it's necessarily a great entry point. Having said that, it's introduced some characters who have become kind of mainstays of at least the comic universe, like Dr. Aphra.
Yeah, definitely. It also gives stuff like the Captain Phasma book gave us more attention to a character people wanted in the films than the actual films did. So there's definitely some stuff that's easier to jump on at than others, and you can get away with having seen less Star Wars. But I think you are right. There's also books that, super niche, and as the line has expanded, they've gone into some areas that it's like, you need to have you need to have watched a lot of Star Wars to grasp this idea.
So I'm going to use that as my platform to jump into IDW's Marvel and Star Wars Adventures.
Nicely done.
Now, this opinion applies more to the Marvel side of things, but I think as time goes on, we'll apply more and more to the Star Wars side of things of these particular books. Mm-hmm. So IDW licensed these 2 properties, and they make comic books aimed at a younger reading audience. They are self-contained little stories. They're not released in singles. They're released purely in little volumes. And those volumes tend to be 2 or 3 kind of short stories. Mm-hmm. They're very cartoony in style, as where some of the Marvel stuff, at least early on, went for a very photorealistic style, tried to capture the actors. This is much more like cartoony and simple. You don't need to know very much about the universes they're set in because they are so standalone. Mm-hmm. I think that helps that it just means the stories aren't tangled up with a kind of lighter, with a broader universe, because they're just these little yarns that are within the universes that they're set in. And I think, especially for Marvel, I think when you're doing a kind of earnest superhero story, I think that's where it works the best, of not trying to tell too big a tale, and just keeping it to sort of nice little moral adventures that they have. I love, as has come up many, many times, like subverted superhero stories, but they work because the writers kind of have the freedom to, do whatever you want with these characters, and they don't have to remain squeaky clean, or they don't have to end the story and be back to where they started. So I think when you're doing a real kind of straight down the line superhero adventure, I think that should be aimed at a younger audience, and I think these fill that hole. So I think if you are out there and you're a big fan of the kind of film characters or the Marvel characters or the Star Wars characters, but don't necessarily want to get entrenched in a soap opera of sorts, I think these are a really great alternative to those stories, and still get your fix.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that I know Angela's into as well, the Star Wars and Marvel Adventures, and they all just look really fun, which is nice. It's nice to have the fun, light-hearted, easy to pick up side of Marvel and Star Wars.
I think that's it. They're low jeopardy, just quite daft and funny little adventures, but it's got all of the characters, all of the kind of bad guys. I think they already lean into the idea of diversity pretty early on. So the Spider-Man book, I don't know if it was from the very beginning, but is not just Peter Parker, it's Gwen Stacy and it's Miles Morales as a minimum. The Captain Marvel kind of side is Kamala Khan and Carol Danvers.
Yeah.
And, I just think they've made the decisions that Marvel are now starting to make. And I do kind of applaud them for when I think they try, when they try and do it right. That's fair play to you, Marvel. But I think here, a lot of it's already there. I think they've started fairly strong in that regard.
Yeah, I think you are definitely right on that one. I think it seems very well considered, which is nice.
Well, the one thing that the Marvel series has that the IDW one doesn't is when Darth Vader cracked the glass of Star Destroyer while he was mad. And I saw that in two different series. I think it's in the main Star Wars one and the Darth Vader one, and both times it's like, that's just rad. That's just cool.
It is. To be fair, it is the most over-the-top Darth Vader at times. There's a point where he takes down an X-Wing by throwing a lightsaber at it.
I really like him being kind of readdressed as this unstoppable machine, because you get that throughout the films, that's what he is. But by its nature, you never really see that. Like, the only time you see him fight is against Luke.
Yeah, because he just, hits Obi-Wan once and he disintegrates.
That's kind of it. Yeah, there's not too much to it. So I think, when he's, pulling ships out the sky with the Force, or just being a terrifying death machine, I think is super cool. Again, probably not in the IDW series, which is more kid-friendly. Keeping more of a Skeletor is fine in that. But I think, that is a cool thing the Marvel comics have done, is making Darth Vader a much more terrifying villain, I think.
I think Terrifying Death Machine is also on the list of great band names that aren't happening yet.
Oh, really? Pumping them out today.
Yeah. Terrifying Death Machine. So does this mean it's my number 3 now? Is that what we're at?
I got in on that and stole that.
I mean, it works. Okay, so my number 3 is something you also know quite a lot about. So my number 3 is Power Rangers.
Heck yeah.
There's been a few creators involved now. Writers are probably easier to run down than artists. Writers starts with Kyle Higgins, Steve Orlando. Definitely gets taken over for a while by Marguerite Bennett, I think.
So, yeah.
There's a chunk of it that like Matt Bloom. Is a professional wrestler. Matt Groom did some. Oh, we never know. Matt Groom did some. He was more of like backup stories that he wrote. A lot of creators involved. And have I said it's Power Rangers yet? Did I?
Yeah. No, you're in there.
I thought I just started listing creators just like to see if we could figure this out.
Yeah, yes.
It's Boom Studios, and it is. Again, I want to say we're about 5 years deep into Power Rangers at this point.
I think, yeah, plenty deep into Power Rangers now.
So initially we had just Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah.
We then had a series that was Go-Go Power Rangers, and now I think the current incarnation is Mighty Morphin and Power Rangers. Is where we're at now.
Yes. Is there also one called like Power Rangers Incorporated or something along those?
Oh, there could be. There's been a divergence in series in recent years. I'm not fully up to date because, again, it's something that got away from me.
Mm-hmm.
The initial Mighty Morphin took place kind of around Power Rangers, the original series, I think is the best way to describe it.
I mean, if anybody knows the mythos of Power Rangers, it kind of starts just after the Green Ranger. If you will. Yeah, the Mighty Morphin mythos of Power Rangers. It starts just after the Green Ranger joins the team.
So about halfway
White Ranger.
About halfway through the first season.
Yeah, I think so. Something along those lines. As were Go-Go Power Rangers, which did have a different. That was mostly written by Ryan Parrott, I think, and I think
yes, and fit in between episodes of Power Rangers.
So I think Go-Go Power Rangers continued the story directly from the TV show. So they were the TV show characters.
Yes.
Continuing beyond the TV show. As where Mighty Morphin was
like an alternative take on.
Yeah, who had got to a kind of similar point in their history when the comic picks up. They also made a Saban's Power Rangers, which was based on the most recent movie.
Yes, they did. I did not read that, but maybe I should. Just to round everything up.
I thought the movie was okay.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go and sing its praises, but I thought it was a fun take on Power Rangers. But sticking with the Mighty Morphin, I think specifically for the moment,
yeah,
I think the art's super nice, and I think Boom of late have developed their own like Boom house style. Do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. It's definitely shifted from when I think of Boom kind of pre-Power Rangers, I think there was a lot of almost like Image or Dark Horse, where there was a lot of series that were like one volume and then perhaps not revisited. In more recent years, I think they've picked up a few more licenses and done things that are a little bit more kind of, definitely in a certain style and have designed in a certain style.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Power Rangers are kind of the pinnacle of that, but I think Boom now have a kind of certain look. Like I think Magic the Gathering, that we read for the podcast, I think has a similar-ish kind of look. I think there's a kind of a Boom style now. But from the suits, the villains, the Zords, all look just right.
Yeah, and if you were into Power Rangers as a kid, or as an adult, let's be fair, if you were into Power Rangers at all, I think this is probably going to appeal to you on some level. It has a lot of freedom that perhaps the show didn't, I think. Obviously, the show works in a limitation of taking clips from Super Sentai and then padding it out with teenagers in California. You're kind of restricted in how you can do that and what your villains can be and how they can behave. I think the benefit here is that Kyle Higgins kind of has the freedom to run wild, which is, I guess, kind of a dream if you were a Power Rangers fan as a kid, is to just do what you want with, everything. And that's, I think that's the fun thing here. And that gets us to like the build up to Shattered Grid, which is then like the big crossover event where all the subsequent Power Rangers kind of come crashing together in one huge, let's be honest, bitchin' event. It's just rad, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think something it's got, because it is a massive universe in its own right, and they are effectively superheroes. And they are also teenagers, and there's some of that classic kind of school angst and adolescent problems, which is very reminiscent of, Teen Titans, Spider-Man,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, they don't have to go to school, to be fair, but
touche.
But I think what the Power Rangers universe has up on that is that it's a fairly tight, continuous story, and actually some of the Power Rangers kind of retire and are replaced by new people, and the cast alters as it goes through. Like, I'm not saying that it always sticks to its guns. Like, it will definitely, an event will happen, then it'll pull the rug out from under you and just go, well, now we fixed that. So it definitely falls into some of those things sometimes. But
yeah,
you can pick it up at number 1 and you can read it through and you can get everything you want from it. And much like Turtles, much like some of the others we've looked at, it has spin-offs as well. I know I read a Pink Ranger series that was really good. That was like a standalone,
which is just called Pink.
Yeah, no, not to be confused with the artist Pink,
or the Aerosmith song,
or just the color. Don't be confused by just the color. It's not what it means.
I don't know what we're talking about, but
I think if you are somebody who's super into the kind of idea of superheroes, like pretty earnest superhero stories combined with classic adolescent angst, but want it in a concise package that doesn't require you to read lots of different crossover events. And when there is a crossover event, that is the book that's being released at that time. Like, it's not happening alongside 40 other books you're expected to read. And I think, although it is a bit sprawling in places, and I think there are bits you can probably ignore if you wanted, I think it keeps the package pretty streamlined. And if you want long-term superhero storytelling, there aren't many better places other than Turtles, the best place than to go to Power Rangers, I think.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you've said. I think it feels nice and it feels streamlined, and whilst it's clearly a big universe, it's a universe that's 1, 2, maybe 3 comics a month. It's nice and, yeah, as you said, concise. It doesn't feel overwhelming, at least. Okay, some of Shattered Grid is a lot to take in, but like everything before that I think is pretty straightforward and just easy to pick up. Obviously, one of the problems here is if you haven't been into Power Rangers growing up, I don't know how much this will appeal to you. I think it will. There will obviously be some imbalance on, if you went into Power Rangers, this might just not tick any of the boxes for you. This might feel strange and different.
I think the writing is of a decent enough quality to appeal just on the strength of its stories. But I know what you mean. Even Mighty Morphin, which is effectively a reboot, still drops you in, what looks like at least months, if not years, into the Power Rangers career. Like, we're not getting their origin stories right off the bat. We're hitting, we're straight in there. And yeah, if you're brand new to Power Rangers, that could be
a bit weird,
a bit of a hurdle to get over. But no, I think it's really rad. And where are their hardbacks, Zach?
I can give you the answers. You're not going to like it.
Are they everywhere?
No, there was a
Oh, it's the Kickstarter, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a quite limited run done of hardcovers so it was year 1, year 2, year 3, and then I think it was Shattered Grid, and then Beyond the Grid. So there's been 5 hardbacks so far as I'm aware. Each very limited runs, so they kind of, if you didn't get them as soon as they came out, they're gone. You can still get Shattered Grid and Beyond the Grid, but the 3 from before that, they don't exist.
Nada.
Boom kickstarted them earlier this year, and I think
I do remember now, yeah.
100 quid per volume, so it was 500 quid for a Kickstarter and of books that have already been released, but this time you get them with nice slipcovers, so that's well worth paying twice the price of the actual book. I don't agree with this because I know that they were like 50 quid, 40 quid a piece, and 500 quid for 5 books seems steep.
Seems steep, doesn't it? Yeah, no, I think I'm with you there. Probably more. And no doubt it had American shipping. It would probably cost us $70 a book on top of all of that.
Yes. I was hoping that the amount of people who have backed the Kickstarter, because it was like super funded, would mean that a lot of people who'd already bought the hardbacks were going to be like selling those on eBay. And they are, but those versions on eBay are also extortionate because there are a lot of people who don't want to pay the Kickstarter price. So,
you know, it'd be a nice. I wonder if this is part of like whether you're not allowed to do this, but I've never seen anybody do it. Set a stretch goal that once you reach a certain amount, you start to reduce everybody's pledge.
I mean, that'd be pretty awesome.
If we get to 100,000 people, then we'll knock £2 off everybody's pledge, and for every 100 more we get, we'll knock another.
I think that would be perhaps the ideal version of it, especially on Kickstarters where it's material that's already been made. So like, I feel like one of the things with the Boom Kickstarter for Power Rangers is the fact that it's like the books are done though, guys. You've released them as paperbacks, as hardbacks. They're done. We know, you know.
But I think it even makes sense for a business. Like if 1,000 people want it and 1,000 people back it, then great, sell it to those 1,000 people and they can pay what it costs to produce 1,000 books. But if 100,000 people want it, then your production cost like plummets.
Yeah,
you can start doing it in bulk, and if you can promise that every time more people come onto it, the price literally drops, and for everybody, not just the people who are backing now, but the people who backed originally, you still make your money. You sell even more volumes. Get Boom on the phone. I've got this great idea.
So, I like that you think I can get Boom on the phone. But
get Monsieur Boom on the phone right now.
Oh, God, I hope the person who runs Boom is like, hi, I'm Mr. Boom.
Mr. Brian Boom. Nice to meet you. It's with an exclamation mark, so it's probably Brian Boom every time.
And this is Miss Studios, and together we are. It's funny because I want it to be true.
It's funny because it is true.
Yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Is this your second pick we're up to? Is that where this is?
I'm up to my number 2 now. And that number 2 is Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
Both versions. So a little bit like Star Wars, it was originally published through Dark Horse, and their version was a continuation of the TV series and effectively kind of filled in series 9 through 12 and concluded the Buffy story.
Mm-hmm.
So the TV show finished at 8, and then this picked up the reins, all with Joss Whedon's blessing, and I think he might have written at least the first volume, if not the first couple.
The first chunk. Yeah.
So that one is for like Buffy hardcore fans who just wanted more of what they got on TV. And a little bit, as we said with the Star Wars Marvel books, they're a bit more photorealistic. They're trying to capture the actual looks of the actors who played those characters. Then in 2019, the license was picked up by Boom, and they have just sort of rebooted the universe, made it a bit more contemporary, brought it up to kind of modern day. So where the original, I guess, was set sort of between the 90s and the early noughties. This is set with much more modern, I don't know, technologies and ideas and ideals and that sort of thing. And in this one, they're not trying to capture the actors. They're a bit more cartoony in that kind of Boomhouse style, but they just capture the intrinsic details of these characters. So Buffy's still blonde, and Angel's still handsome. I mean, so is Boreanaz, but that's for a different podcast.
I think one of the things that sticks with me with the Boom version is that when they released all the character designs of Xander, he was just me at the time. We had the same hair. There's even one character design where we were in like this. I was looking at it whilst wearing like the same outfit. So I can't help but feel like I'm owed some money for gimmick infringement.
And I think it's you should definitely get Boom on the phone. We've got two things to bring up to them now. But with the new series, I think they still cover quite a lot of the important beats, like Hellmouth and etc. The various beats throughout the Buffy TV series.
Yeah,
I quite like to be able to pick it up afresh and have the stories kind of reinterpreted and retold in a different way. And as you were saying, it's like having the toy box, isn't it? It's like being a fan of something and then being told, here's all of the bits, make whatever you want to make with it.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's plenty of that. And again, I think the series will, if not already, spin out into some other character books. But if you're into like supernatural book kickery, again, combined with that school adolescent woes, I wonder if there's a pattern there. Then I think this is the one for you. If you're super into the TV series, hunt down those Dark Horse volumes because, there's more story out there for you.
And they come in massive hardbacks. Or at least they did. I don't know if they still do. But
that is good to know. There was an Angel series as well through Dark Horse, but I never...
And Spike as well, right? We get.
Oh yeah, I think there was. Forgot about that.
I can't remember if there's anything else.
I'm just remembering Spike's name.
Yeah, Spike probably amongst my favourite Buffy characters.
Doesn't he play Brainiac in Smallville as well?
Oh, he might do actually. Yeah, and then he's one of the dads in Runaways.
Nice. Good old James Masters.
He was also in. He was Jack's brother in Torchwood. I need to get a life and stop chronicling James Masters' career.
It maybe be
obviously, it's now time to plug my secret James Masters podcast. We just run down what he's doing right now. No, that doesn't exist yet. I didn't realize I was like so aware of his career until just now. Thanks, Will. That's
you're welcome. I'm always here to enlighten you about your own psyche.
Sure, that'll help if there was ever a pub quiz about him, specifically about him, not about Buffy. Like
no, just about James Masters.
Should I be talking about something now? Is that what?
I think so. I think Buffy is. The new series in particular is just really great, but I think I said everything I was going to say about Buffy. Yeah, no,
I agree. I didn't read much of the Dark Horse stuff. I kind of dipped in, and I just think I didn't have the time. I think when it was coming out, I was probably, let's be honest, halfway through reading something else that took me an eternity to read because that's my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've checked out a little bit of the Boom stuff, and it is something that I want to catch up on at some point. So, yes. I'm also waiting for that Buffy the Vampire Slayer Power Rangers crossover.
You know it.
I don't know what you'd call that as a crossover, because Buffy the Vampire Slayer Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is too long.
Mighty Morphin Vampire Slayer Power Vampire? Slayer?
Power Vampire is strong. I don't know what it means, but it sounds super dangerous.
Vampire Rangers.
Oh man, Vampire Rangers kind of feels very similar to, you know, those were they the Psycho Rangers that were Power Rangers in Space, Lost Galaxy, who had the coolest character designs because they were just terrifying. So, just really scary versions of the Power Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Power. I mean, I know we've gone back to a different series now, but they do hit a lot of those classic comic beats, such as evil alternative versions.
Love it. That's what I'm all about.
Lord Drakkon, baby.
Which I think, again, I've cited it for a lot of things in past podcasts. Alternate universes, evil doppelgangers, body swaps, time loops, all very 90s things, and things that 90s kids still love as adults, I think, it's our burden.
It is. It's our burden, and we carry it with great aplomb.
And what a burden, you know. So, my number 2 pick, we're on number 2, right? I guess.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did I go first?
Yeah. You went first. So, my number 2 pick is perhaps massively out of character for me, but let's run with it. And we're going back to IDW, baby. Of course we are. This is like an IDW boom list. And I'm going to go with My Little Pony.
Yes, please.
So there's a bunch of series. The main one is Friendship is Magic. There have been some spin-offs, tie-ins, crossovers. Whilst not echoing like the series too much, a lot of it does kind of follow like where the series is up to. So if you read a comic that's between like, I don't know, season 2 and 3, 4 and 5, whatever, it's going to reflect any changes to the world of My Little Pony that we've seen.
Sure.
Which I guess makes sense. I also think the comic has now continued past the end of the series, so that's interesting. They also do a bunch of not crossovers, a bunch of like team ups where they kind of take unlikely pairings from the cartoon universe and just throw them together and go, well, what would happen if these two characters were just miraculously teaming up for this adventure? Which is kind of fun and ridiculous. And I just think overall as a series, much like the cartoon, it comes away with some really good positive messages and kind of does something ridiculous and cartoonish, but very well-meaning. And yeah, I can't knock it. And villain-wise, man, My Little Pony's got some strong villains.
Yeah.
Not entirely a villain, but Discord, who is voiced by Q from Star Trek, and
awesome.
Is Q. He's just a god of chaos. That's just good stuff. And yeah, I just think it works as a comic and works as a cartoon as well. So, but
come fight me, the internet. So I've not read any My Little Pony, sadly. But I think this is going to sound a bit like a negative, and I don't mean it that way. I'll try and explain why. But I think what a lot of these licensed products have in common, and the reason they work so well when they're reinvented kind of for a new era or under a new design or whatever, is because the characters are quite two-dimensional. Like
literally in some cases.
Yeah, well, yeah, very literally. But also their character traits are their character traits kind of forever, and they don't really evolve as individuals.
Yeah.
Raphael's always grumpy. Donnie does machines, etc. But it's because of that you can then place them in lots of different scenarios and see, well, how would this character then react to that scenario, knowing who they are and like what what they do. And I think that's where the interest really comes from for me. And it allows you to tell stories about much bigger things than the characters themselves. It's not really about their personal journey. It's about how, as a team or a family or whatever, have kind of overcome a piece of adversity, and there's normally a nice message packaged in with it as well. So while I'm all for, complicated character writing and depth in character, sometimes just having these almost templates you can pull and twist and mold into something which only vaguely resembles where it started, I think is brilliant. And I also think sometimes when creators are put in limitations, they can sometimes turn out sometimes their best work, but often really great work, because they have to be super creative within this
bubble.
Bubble's exactly it. And I think a lot of these licenses, when they work, it is because of that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think basically, okay, maybe not Bond or Star Wars, but Power Rangers or Buffy. Power Rangers, My Little Pony, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Often we see like these characters reduced to like, Donatello does machines, Raphael's grumpy, Leonardo's the leader, much like Optimus Prime is the leader, or
Rodimus.
Twilight Sparkle's the leader. And I think that's the thing where we see often in cartoons, characters are assigned like a core concepts that basically, a core concept is obviously something else, but you know what I mean? A concept's at their core that defines what their shtick is.
A character trait, which is them.
Yeah, which then when you're given the freedom of comics, which means you can explore that in a different sense, it lets us see like how can you flip that, and whilst their main trait is they're incredibly loyal or they're incredibly honest or whatever, this thing pushes is a good thing. What is the downside of that? Because that then opens the possibilities of what you can explore and what that character would learn from whatever situation. And I think that much as it is with all the others, I think that is one of the strengths of like character storytelling with My Little Pony, is you can like make them really good characters as the show has shown. Feels wrong. As the series has demonstrated, there you go, flipping both words on you. You can make them really strong characters, but those concepts that like define them, then you can explore them in different ways. And when you don't have the restraints of, half an hour's worth of TV or 22, carry them all. I don't know, a season's worth of whatever. I think you get some freedom to kind of run wild and see what ideas you want to explore, and that's one of the strengths here. I also think more people should watch My Little Pony because not enough people have.
You darn tootin'. Also, there is a crossover with Transformers.
Friendship in disguise, baby.
Which has the best tagline in any written medium ever to existed, except for maybe Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. Because that's strong work, and that
we've
needs to be
talked
respected.
about this a lot, and it's such good stuff. There is a second Transformers, My Little Pony Transformers crossover going on now, which is The Magic of Cybertron. And I guess while the first one put the Transformers in Equestria, that's right, the sequel puts the ponies in Cybertron, which I can't knock it. I don't know what you do for a third crossover, but I mean, I do. My core tells me that the next one is like My Little Pony Ghostbusters or My Little Pony TMNT, My Little Pony Usagi Yojimbo. That would get weird. They would all get weird. I think this is the thing. The weirdness of crossing them over with the Transformers is also kind of the brilliance behind it, that it is so ludicrous that...
Yeah, it should never, ever fit. And yet those puzzle pieces sit snugly together.
Utterly nail it, and I can't knock it. It's a good volume. I've not read the second crossover yet, but undoubtedly, I'm going.
It's coming around. Superb. Right. Well, I'll crack on with my final pick, and you'll be pleased to know it is not from Boom, and it is not from IDW.
So it's a lie. Interesting.
So my final pick and my top pick is Avatar: The Last Airbender / The Legend of Korra comics that came out of Dark Horse.
Yes, they did. Interesting. Yeah.
I think they've stopped now, haven't they? Have they done their last one?
I think so, but
So
part of
what-
me just suspect is that a Boom going to pick this up.
I was going to say, watch this space while Boom go and buy that license. But the stories continue and fill in gaps within the two TV series, Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. And unlike some of the others, are maybe not as easy to get in on the ground floor with. Because it has I think the fictional world that these stories exist in is really cool. I think it's a really well-rounded and realized world and society that they live in.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes coming into that without a bit of foreknowledge about what the different countries kind of represent or the different regions can be a bit tricky. But I would also recommend is just go and watch Avatar: The Last Airbender and then immediately follow that by The Legend of Korra, because they're both just superb. And it's had a bit of a resurgence of late, hasn't it? I think, did it come out on Netflix? And
Yeah, I think Avatar was added and then Korra was added a little bit later. I recently watched all of Korra. I think I've mentioned that on a podcast recently, maybe. And I'd never read any of the Avatar or Korra comics, and now that I've finished Korra, I kind of feel like I probably want to quite a lot.
yeah, man, I just want to spend more time in that world. I love the kind of magic system that they have, or the powers system that they sort of embody, is all based on martial arts. So it looks cool when people are kicking and fire's coming out, or it looks super cool.
You're not wrong.
The characters are really great. Again, they do embody this kind of preset character.
Yeah, definitely.
But they're also all wildly different. They all feel unique. And so many of the characters are just so extremely likable.
Varric, I hear you.
Varric is the absolute man. I mean, it reminded me of Seahawk.
Yeah, that is exactly the comparison I made.
She-Ra, yeah.
That they are just exactly the same character in every sense. Like, they even look kind of similar. There's
the mustache and everything. Oh, it's really good. But no, I think the characters are great. Bolin's great.
Yeah.
Don't forget about my boy Bolin. It's full of six-legged flying bison.
Yeah, it is.
Who doesn't need more of that? And the stories are, again, a bit like the Sonic one. They're funny and they're really snappy dialogue, and the characters bounce off each other really well. And there's just enough jeopardy in the stories to kind of keep you invested and keep you on the edge of your seat. But I would also say it'll be a great gift for any age. I think they are universally likable. I think that's been quite true of a lot of things on my list because, well, I'm a big old kid, really, and I take a lot of pleasure out of kid stuff.
That is entirely fair. Yeah, I definitely need to go and read the Avatar and Korra comics. But should I wait until Boom start there?
Well, with these ones, you can sort of buy any volume because they're not co-current. Like one volume will tell a story at a very specific point in time.
Okay.
And the next one could be during the series, after the series. I mean, is it 100 years between The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know if it's dead on 100 years, but it's like
somewhere around.
Ish.
Yeah. So there's quite a lot of gap, quite a lot of story to tell in that period of Aang. Like, we know that he grows up and has children, but you don't you never really see that. You just see
we
meet the kids.
We get a few little flashbacks, particularly in the like first season of Korra, or first 2 seasons, but we don't really see the great landscape of what's happened. Also, Aang must have been crazy old, and Tenzin must be crazy old. 100 years to only have 2 generations in it seems like a long time, right? That's not just me.
Well, I mean, how old's Aang at the end of the... Is he like 13?
Maybe, but Toph's still alive. Man, there's a lot of questions.
Maybe it's much less time, and
maybe we're just determined it's 100 years, and it's been
40 years.
Yeah, it's like 20 years later. It's like, okay.
No, that makes more sense.
It's definitely more than 20 because Tenzin is like
they've
50s,
planes and stuff. But
yeah, right.
Technology's moved on quite a lot.
That takes like thousands of years. I don't know. This is beside the point.
I know we're really showing our science knowledge here.
Yeah.
But no, it's something that I really, really love. I think the whole series and the world and the concepts and the characters are absolutely top. And if you've not watched it, go and watch it. If you have watched it and you just want more,
go and watch it again.
Go and watch it again. There's a volume that's come out, and I haven't read it yet, but I've got my eye on it. It's like how Toph invented metal bending and like creating the metal bending school. So I want me some of that.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty rad, let's be honest. So does that mean this is my number 1 pick time?
This is your big crowning pick.
A big crowning pick. That sounds really weird.
Good.
So we're going back home to IDW. And to something that I actually started reading right before I started rereading all the Turtles, and I haven't finished yet, but I will, which is Ghostbusters. It was started up in I want to say about 2013-ish by Eric Burnham and Dan Schoening, who seem to have stuck with it for quite a significant chunk of time.
I think it's always good if you can, like if the creative team stay the same.
Yeah, and I think Tom Waltz has dipped in and out, who seems to be the head of all things at IDW. So I read the first volume of Ghostbusters kind of the end of last year, not long before deciding to read some Turtles, and we all know how well that went. And was pretty surprised because I didn't really have much of an expectation, and yet, like, okay, I'm into this, and it kind of immediately reminded me what it is I like about Ghostbusters and what it is I liked about the real Ghostbusters and Extreme Ghostbusters. And I think the cartoon style kind of bleeds over into Dan Schoening's artwork. In fact, it kind of feels like if this was a cartoon that followed and Extreme Ghostbusters, and this was like whatever the next one, I think it does look the way I would expect that cartoon to look. It looks like someone who's taken on board what the previous shows looks like, what the film looks like. And we kind of start off with Ray dealing with the guilt of summoning the Marshmallow Man and having nightmares about a giant Ray Marshmallow Man destroying New York. So I've read the first couple of volumes, and then I've dipped in with obviously the Turtles crossovers, which give me some spoilers I didn't need.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think there's something about it that immediately kind of made me realize just how much I do love Ghostbusters, and made me go out and buy the ridiculous deluxe edition Blu-rays with the steelbooks and the.
No, completely with you. I love the Ghostbusters. The films were a big part of my childhood. And in fact, I think perhaps one of the first ever comics or comic-related medium I think I ever had was an annual of the real Ghostbusters comic, which was based on the animated series.
Yeah.
From the late 80s.
It must be, right? It must be like...
I think the comic came out in 88, so I think the TV series must have been
Slightly before that, 87, 86.
I think
When was the film?
about 80s, mid-80s.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, huge fan of Ghostbusters, and I think because of that, the comic series, when I finally got around to it, immediately reminded me why.
My first interaction, I think, with Ghostbusters, this version of the comic, was in the TMNT crossover.
Okay, yeah. I feel like that's not the ideal beginning to...
I'm not sure it was either, but as I say, my love for these characters and the version of New York that they live in.
Yeah, which is fundamentally ridiculous.
Yeah. I've got to say, the trailer for the new film, I know that because of the world that we live in, people will hate it automatically without having seen more than the trailer, because it doesn't star the same three old white men that it used to.
Yeah, that's obviously the problem.
Or the best character, Winston, of course. But as soon as they pull out the old ghost trap from a dusty cupboard and the music kicks in, man, my hairs are on end, my goosebumps are up. Like I am.
We haven't covered this, but we definitely need to go and see Ghostbusters Afterlife together. Yeah, really into it with the trailer. And did you see the little... They released a scene with Bill Murray reacting to a scene in a supermarket with loads of little marshmallow men. And yes, please. I'm really into it, and I know people. You're right. People will hate it. People had written off Answering the Call before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? No, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. It's fine.
It's fine. It's perfectly serviceable.
Also, Dan Aykroyd's cameo in it. I can't remember the full dialogue. I just know they tell him he needs to get out of the city, and he's ends with "I'm not afraid of no ghosts." And
what more do you need?
It's all the Dan Aykroyd I've ever needed. I mean, to be fair, I think an unfortunate amount of my childhood is based around Dan Aykroyd and my dad's love of the Blues Brothers, with good reason, which I feel like we've discussed on a previous podcast. But where's my Blues Brothers comic?
Yeah, right.
Don't know what it involves. Just two idiots making the way across Chicago playing gigs. Nothing else. No twist. No.
No.
It could even be from the Ghostbusters team for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked what I read of Ghostbusters, and I am looking forward to jumping back into it following my, TMNT. I'm going to take a little IDW break where I consider that there are other publishers for a few months. But after that, I think Ghostbusters is going to be my next thing. I do know all the hardcovers are out of print for this one. Sorry to disappoint. Nice. I know the first one was called Total Containment and was the containing thing that they put all the ghosts in. I think the second hardback was a ghost trap, and I think one of them, the third was the Proton Pack. And they've all been discontinued, and people sell them for astronomical prices on eBay.
Boo.
Great. So I am probably not in hardback form, but I'm going to carry on with my Ghostbusters reading and probably have a really good time, I guess. I'm also going to just watch the films over and over again, I think, now that I can do other things other than reading tales.
Yeah.
I just love Ghostbusters
stuff in it. I think it's just such a huge part of my formative years. I had all the toys, Ecto-1, Proton Pack, the Fire Station, so many iconic.
I never had the Fire Station, but
so good. So yeah, no, I think overall, the point being of today's podcast was to highlight a bunch of licensed products, which I think by their very nature tend to get a pretty bad name. They are a cheap kind of money spinner from an existingly popular brand.
Yeah, of course. And I can understand why. Don't get me wrong, sometimes there are some incredibly cynical comics released, much like there's incredibly cynical spin-offs for everything that are the cash grab that they seem. But I think the further we get from like the peak Transformers success of the 80s or the peak Turtles success of the early 90s, peak Ghostbusters success of 1980 something, or Buffy, let's be honest, Buffy was over by 2002, 2004 maybe.
I think so, yeah.
And I think the legitimate nostalgia is the thing that brings a lot of these things back. I don't think there's as much of a desperate cash in as there is with even stuff from Marvel at times, I think.
No, I think you're right that a lot of people who love those things then are the writers now. So they're bringing back those things. And let's be frank, comics aren't that big a money spinner.
No,
so
there is that side of it.
In order for you to sell a comic on a licensed product and realistically have more than 4 issues, there has to be something about it, because comics fans will pick stuff up and throw it in a fire like immediately if it's really trash. And I say I've seen Bloodborne comics and Halo comics and etc. in the same way that you get these things in novelizations as well. Like, yeah, whoever wants Doom the novelization, I don't know, but forget them. Find anything that's got more than like 20 issues, or just consult our excellently curated list today.
Yeah, we've given you 10 that are worth the look.
And have a good time, because there's tons of stuff out there. And I just think licensed products shouldn't be overlooked immediately. I think there is loads of quality.
Yes, I agree. I agree with what you've said. And I also think, though, if you want some Bloodborne, go read some Bloodborne comics,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it might not be for me, but knock yourself out.
Yeah, I think that's one of the keys to the license things. Is like if you were super into My Little Pony or Buffy or whatever, you're probably going to find something you like about the comics. It's just truth.
Just inevitable.
So I think that's us.
I think that's us done.
So we've been Will and Zach. This has been Bigger Than Capes. And remember that comics are bigger than capes.